Imagine, if you will, just looking back through the mists of time to the very dawn of human civilization. We're talking thousands upon thousands of years ago.
Right.
And in this ancient world, if you were to speak of the supreme creator of the universe, you wouldn't refer to the divine as he. You would say she. For an unimaginably long stretch of human history, God was a woman.
It's a concept that fundamentally challenges the narratives most of us grew up with. We're just so deeply conditioned in the modern world to visualize the divine architect as inherently masculine, you
Yeah,
know?
exactly.
But when you start digging into the earliest strata of human existence, the historical and archaeological records paint a remarkably different picture, a completely different understanding of power, creation, and, well, the cosmos itself.
Welcome to this deep dive into the historical research presented in Merlin Stone's groundbreaking book, When God Was a Woman. Our mission today is to step into that ancient world and follow the breadcrumbs.
It's going to be quite a journey.
Oh, absolutely. We really want to understand how a civilization that universally revered a female deity transformed into a world dominated by patriarchal structures.
Right.
We'll look at the tangible artifacts left behind, the catastrophic collision of cultures that changed everything, and a truly fascinating theory about how one of the most famous stories of all time, the story of Adam and Eve, might actually be, well, a piece of brilliant ancient political propaganda.
But before we step into the timeline, I think it is essential to establish the framework for our discussion today.
Definitely.
We are approaching ancient religious texts, and that includes the Judeo-Christian Bible, strictly through a historical and anthropological lens, as they're analyzed in our source material.
Yeah, I want to make that super clear to you listening. The intent here is absolutely not to weigh in on modern theology, endorse a belief system, or attack anyone's personal faith.
Exactly. We are looking objectively at the author's synthesis of ancient history.
Right. We're examining how shifting political power dynamics and military conquests shape the foundational myths that continue to subtly influence our culture today.
So to really comprehend the magnitude of this shift toward patriarchy, we first have to ground ourselves in what the world looked like before that shift occurred.
Good before picture.
Right. We have to look past philosophical speculation and examine the physical artifacts early humans actually left behind in the dirt.
And those artifacts take us incredibly far back. I mean, the timeline we're dealing with starts in the Upper Paleolithic era, around 25,000 BC.
Which is just a staggering amount of time ago.
It really is. And it starts with the discovery of numerous Venus figures. You've probably seen pictures of them, these small carved statues of robust pregnant women found stretching from Europe all the way to Siberia. Then the timeline moves forward into the Neolithic period to early established communities like Catalhuyuk in modern-day Turkey, dating back to 6500 BC.
And if you were to walk through Catalhuyuk back then, you would see this densely packed town of mud brick houses.
Right.
And inside those homes, archaeologists have uncovered elaborate shrines dedicated to a female deity. She's often depicted giving birth or flanked by powerful animals like leopards.
Wow, leopards.
Yeah. The presence of the goddess was just woven into the everyday fabric of domestic life.
There is a common misconception about these early figures, though, that we really need to clear up.
Oh, for sure.
I think a lot of people picture early goddess worship as this sort of primitive, passive Earth Mother vibe, just a simple fertility cult for early farmers.
Right, like she's just a symbol for crops.
Exactly. But the sources reveal a deity who was the active, driving force of civilization itself.
Yeah, the historical texts from slightly later, more developed ancient cultures make her active role undeniable. In ancient Sumer and Egypt, the female deity wasn't just sitting back watching the crops grow.
Because you're busy.
Very busy. She was actively credited with the invention of agriculture, the discovery of medicine, and the creation of language.
Wait, language too?
Yes. Consider the Sumerian goddess Nidaba. She wasn't a fertility symbol at all. She was revered as the official scribe of heaven and the inventor of writing.
That's amazing.
And in Egypt, Isis was invoked as a primary lawgiver. She was a sage who dispensed justice and righteous wisdom to the pharaohs.
Okay, let's unpack this. Why did early humans naturally gravitate toward a female supreme deity in the first place?
That is the big question.
Because when you strip away thousands of years of accumulated philosophy, it essentially comes down to raw biology. In the earliest stages of human cognitive development, the biological mechanics of paternity were completely invisible.
Right. Anthropologists have long noted this biological reality. The connection between, a sexual encounter and a woman giving birth 9 months later, that was not an intuitive leap for early nomadic humans.
Right, there's a huge time delay there.
Exactly. What they saw with their own eyes was that women alone possessed the miraculous, inexplicable power to produce new human life from their own bodies. The mother was perceived as the singular, solitary creator of her family.
If you think about it like an early startup business, the mother is the sole founder.
Huh. Yeah, that's a good way to look at it.
No one even knows what a co-founder is yet because the mechanics of paternity are completely off the radar. The mother is the undisputed head of the organization simply because she's the only one visibly generating the new people that keep the tribe alive.
What's fascinating here is how that biological mystery naturally translated into immense social and economic power for women.
Right.
Because the mother was the only universally recognized parent, early human societies organized themselves around her. Ancestry, physical property, tribal affiliations, they were passed entirely through the female line.
Which creates what we call matrilineal or mother kinship society.
Exactly. The whole social structure flowed outward from the mother.
And we can actually see the long-term ripple effects of that matrilineal foundation in the historical records of places like ancient Egypt. The status of women there was incredibly high, far surpassing what a lot of people assume about the ancient world.
Oh, absolutely. We have surviving papyri documenting Egyptian women confidently running their own commercial businesses, engaging in independent civil litigation in the courts, and maintaining full independent property rights separate from their husbands.
That's wild to think about.
It gets better. Later historical accounts from Greek writers like Herodotus express absolute shock at the Egyptian social structure.
Because it was so different from Greece.
Yes. Herodotus wrote about how Egyptian men would often stay home to manage the loom, while the women went out to the public markets to negotiate complex business transactions. It was a societal model that fully integrated and respected female economic autonomy.
So we have this vivid picture of an ancient world. Matrilineal societies where women hold significant economic leverage, living under the spiritual canopy of a supreme female creator.
Yeah, a thriving, internally consistent system.
Right. But if this matrilineal system was so deeply ingrained in human biology and economics for tens of thousands of years, it wouldn't just quietly fade away on its own.
No, it certainly didn't.
It would take something catastrophic to uproot it.
And the transformation was anything but peaceful. We leave the largely agrarian, stable goddess cultures and enter a period of massive, violent technological upheaval.
Driven by a specific group of people.
Right, known to historians as the Indo-Europeans.
These were nomadic pastoral tribes sweeping down from the harsh northern regions, places like the Caucasus Mountains and the sweeping Russian steppes.
Yeah.
Starting around 2400 BC, they began migrating south in massive waves into the Near East and India, and they brought a very, very different way of life.
Their environment had shaped them into a highly mobile, martial culture. And they brought with them two staggering technological advantages that the agrarian goddess cultures simply did not possess.
Which were?
Horse-drawn war chariots pulling 2 horses of rest, and eventually, the secret of forging iron weapons.
The technological mismatch is almost hard to comprehend. I mean, the indigenous goddess worshippers were defending themselves primarily with copper and bronze weapons.
Right, which are much softer metals.
Exactly. If you take a bronze sword and strike it against an iron shield, or try to parry an iron weapon, the bronze will literally shatter.
Wow.
Add in the terrifying speed of chariots crashing into foot soldiers, and it is a complete, devastating military subjugation.
And alongside their iron and their horses, the Indo-Europeans brought a completely foreign theology. They were fiercely patriarchal.
Completely opposite of what was there.
Yeah, their supreme deity was always male, typically a thunder, storm, or light god who resided on the highest mountain peaks, wielding fire and lightning.
Like who?
Think of the Vedic god Indra in India, or Zeus in Greece, or the Hittite storm god Taru.
Right. And they also brought a new moral framework. They introduced this very strict dichotomy of light versus dark, equating light with absolute goodness and dark with absolute evil.
Which was completely alien to the goddess cultures.
Right, because they viewed the universe holistically. To a farmer, the dark earth and the dark night are just as necessary for growing crops as the sunlight.
Exactly. It wasn't good versus evil to them.
But wait, I have to challenge this premise for a second. I understand the military advantage. You can hold an iron sword to someone's throat and take their land, their grain, and their cities.
Sure.
But people endure brutal military occupations all the time without giving up their faith. People will gladly die for their religion. How does a superior weapon magically rewrite thousands of years of deep foundational spiritual belief?
It doesn't happen magically, and it certainly doesn't happen overnight. You're touching on the vital difference between a temporary military occupation and total cultural assimilation.
Okay, go on.
To build a lasting empire, the Indo-Europeans couldn't just garrison the cities. They had to break the cultural transmission from mother to child.
Ah, I see.
Theology at this level is a deeply political tool. If the conquered populace is praying to an ancient, powerful goddess, they have a spiritual rallying point that operates outside the new king's control.
That makes total sense.
So the conquerors had to dismantle the indigenous culture from the inside out. They had to weaponize mythology.
Because physical conquest only controls the current generation. To control the grandchildren, you have to rewrite the stars. The new rulers needed spiritual propaganda.
Exactly. And when you look at the myths that emerge during and after these invasions, a very specific, calculated narrative pattern appears.
What kind of pattern?
Across different regions, you suddenly find stories where a young, aggressive male warrior god brutally murders an older, established female deity.
Jeez.
Yeah, and to make this mythological murder psychologically acceptable to the conquered people, the female deity is often stripped of her human form and depicted as a terrifying serpent or a dragon of chaotic darkness.
And the sources outline incredible examples of this. Like in the Babylonian creation myth, the Enuma Elish, the new storm god Marduk, literally slices the ancient creatress goddess Tiamat in half to form the heavens and the earth.
Right.
He turns the mother of all life into raw building materials. And over in India, the invading Aryan texts describe the storm god Indra murdering the ancient goddess Danu and her son.
And pay close attention to the visual symbolism being manipulated here. The serpent was one of the most ancient, universally revered symbols of the goddess.
Right. Snakes were a big deal.
They were. In the old world, the snake shedding its skin was a beautiful symbol of rebirth, prophecy, and deep wisdom. The Egyptian cobra goddess Uazit was a fierce protector.
But the Indo-European conquerors intentionally flipped the script.
They did. They recast the serpent as a symbol of pure evil, treacherous chaos, and dark magic.
Here's where it gets really interesting. If you think about this like a modern, hostile corporate takeover, the new board of directors doesn't just want to fire the original founder.
No, they want the employees to actively hate the founder so they never try to bring her back.
Exactly. So the new management writes a completely fabricated company history, claiming the founder was actually an evil, embezzling dragon that the new board heroically had to slay to save everyone from destruction.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it is a masterclass in psychological warfare. The invaders knew they couldn't just erase the goddess entirely. Her worship was too deeply embedded in the soil and the daily habits of the people.
So what do?
They assimilated her. They took the sacred and made it sinister. Or, in cases where she was too popular to turn into a monster, they forced her into the mythological role of a subservient, often nagging wife.
Oh, like Hera.
Exactly. You see this vividly in Greek mythology with Hera, who was constantly marginalized and punished by Zeus, reflecting the new, male-dominated social hierarchy being forced upon the populace.
And this wasn't just a literary exercise playing out in the heavens. As the goddess was methodically downgraded in myth, mortal women were systematically downgraded in reality.
Yeah, the cosmic stories were being used to legitimize brutal earthly laws.
Right.
And the historical record allows us to track this legal decline, step by step. We see the Sumerian reforms around 2300 BC, which officially outlawed polyandry. That's the practice of women having multiple husbands.
Which was the first major blow to female social autonomy.
Yes.
Then you track the timeline forward into the later Assyrian and Hebrew laws, and the walls completely close in. Women are legally stripped of their property rights. They lose the right to inherit wealth.
It's just a systematic dismantling.
And we see the sudden introduction of terrifying sexual double standards, like instituting the death penalty for young women who lost their virginity prior to marriage.
The entire legal apparatus was re-engineered. The goal was to permanently dismantle the ancient matrilineal kinship systems and violently enforce patrilineal descent.
Right, because the new patriarchal rulers needed absolute certainty of paternity to ensure their accumulated wealth and power passed exclusively to their own sons.
Exactly. But this raises an important question. How do you get a once-free populace to internalize and accept these oppressive new laws as the natural order of things?
You tell them a story. Which brings us to the climax of this entire historical shift.
Yeah.
The story of Adam and Eve.
It really is the ultimate culmination.
Yeah. When you read the Genesis creation myth through the anthropological lens of the sources, it ceases to be just a simple moral fable. It reveals itself as a conspicuously contrived, brilliant piece of political machinery.
The text was offered by a patriarchal society deeply influenced by the mythological frameworks of their Indo-European neighbors. When you break down the symbolism, the political intent is hiding in plain sight.
So let's look at the mechanics of the story. First, Eve is not the creator. She is created from the man, specifically from Adam's rib.
Right.
That is a deliberate, massive reversal of the fundamental biological reality of birth. It symbolically strips the female of her ancient status as the sole miraculous generator of human life.
Then look at her characterization. She's portrayed as weak-willed, easily deceived, and foolish.
Yeah.
She alone makes the choice that causes the catastrophic downfall of all humanity. And who is the agent of this deception? Who does she converse with?
A serpent.
A serpent. The precise, ancient, sacred symbol of the very goddess religion that the new patriarchal order had spent centuries trying to violently eradicate.
The story takes the most sacred symbol of the old world and turns it into the author of human suffering.
It's astonishing.
And the ultimate resolution of the myth is the absolute clincher. God divinely decrees that because of Eve's inherent sinfulness, man shall forever rule over woman. It wraps up a violent, centuries-long political takeover with a neat, unassailable divine bow.
The brilliance and the tragedy of the story is that the decree of male dominance isn't presented as a human law that can be debated or overturned.
Right.
It is presented as the supreme, infallible will of the universe. It provided absolute theological cover for the new patriarchal power structure, turning the subjugation of women from a political reality into a spiritual necessity.
So what does this all mean for you, listening today? Think about the lingering gender stereotypes that still float around in our modern culture.
They're everywhere.
The subtle biases that suggest women are naturally more conniving or inherently dangerous temptresses, or that their biological destiny is to be subservient helpers to men. It is staggering to realize that these concepts aren't rooted in human nature. They are the direct, lingering echoes of a specific, ancient political propaganda campaign designed to secure the power of chariot-riding conquerors thousands of years ago.
It is the ultimate tragic irony of the Eve narrative, a myth that was strategically engineered by ancient conquerors to suppress the cultural memory of a powerful female creator, eventually became the permanent bedrock template for female guilt in the Western world.
It is a fabricated shadow that has followed women for millennia.
It fundamentally changes how you view the architecture of society, doesn't it?
It really does. I mean, we've covered a massive expanse of history today. We started in a forgotten era where women were revered as the undisputed, singular creators of life and civilization, and where the divine was universally understood as a mother.
We traced how that foundational system was shattered by the technological shock of iron and chariots, driven by nomadic invaders from the north. And we explored the calculated mechanics of assimilation, how military might was paired with spiritual propaganda to rewrite the laws of inheritance and the myths of creation.
All of it culminating in the story of Eve, a narrative perfectly designed to legitimize a new world order. It is a profound amount of history to digest.
It certainly is.
But there is one final lingering detail from the research that we want to leave you with, something to mull over long after you finish listening.
Yes. It involves the incredible linguistic echoes of this ancient collision that are still hiding in plain sight in the words we use.
Oh, this part blew my mind.
Think about the ancient Sanskrit language of the Aryan invaders in India. In their language, the word mrityu meant death or murder.
Okay.
It was a word specifically tied to their mythological accounts of killing the ancient indigenous cow goddess. Thousands of years later, through the evolution of Indo-European languages, that ancient Sanskrit word, ritu, survives on our tongues today.
Wow.
It is the exact linguistic root of the English word murder.
Just incredible. And consider the mysterious Nephilim mentioned in the biblical book of Genesis, the giants who supposedly walked the earth in ancient days.
Right.
When you understand the history of the invasions, you have to wonder, are these biblical giants just fairy tales? Or are they the traumatized cultural memory of the physically taller, chariot-riding Indo-European warriors who suddenly towered over the local agrarian populations?
It completely shifts the ground beneath the text.
It does. It compels you to stop accepting the stories you've inherited at face value and to start looking for the historical scaffolding hidden behind the myths.
Absolutely.
So the next time you encounter a foundational myth, a religious text, or a cultural legend, pause and ask yourself, Whose political history are you really reading?
Good question.
Are you absorbing the genuine spiritual history of the defeated, or are you reading the carefully crafted propaganda of the victors? Think back to the deep past, to the millennia when God was a woman, and consider just how profoundly a single well-told story can re-engineer